I would like to thank the organizer for this kind invitation to this meeting, which is always very interesting to me. I have a long title, I don't, and but I promise to keep in time. And to go forward, yeah, is here. Oh, here. Yeah, not needed to say that really snake envenoming is a major neglected problem. Perhaps there should be a discussion really on how we should be able to raise the concern about this disease among the Western people, those where the funding is more largely available. I put this slide only also because my talk will be on neurotoxic snakes, which like bungaros or taipan, vipera, micrurus, because they are very representative of many other species which produce a venom capable of inducing degeneration, peripheral neurodegeneration. And all these snakes, they induce a flaccid paralysis, which is very similar to that caused by botulism, which is a disease that we are also studying in the lab, and also autoimmune diseases like the Guillain-Barré, which we are also studying. In this case, the most responsible component of the disease is specifically a neurotoxic phospholipase A that induces the generation of peripheral motor axon terminals. And the disease can be seen here. It is characterized by a flaccid with general weakness, which you don't see, ptosis, the eyelid dropping, diplopia, so the not possibility of focusing, and dysarthria, abdominal pain, some autonomic dysfunction, which are generic, and respiratory failure. People die by respiratory failure. The other important thing is that this disease, like botulism, is fully reversible, provided that the patient can access to an ICU, an intensive care unit, being mechanically ventilated. And this is well shown by a classical paper by Professor Worrell and colleagues, showing by electrophysiological methods that I will briefly discuss later, the paralysis, which is followed by a recovery that in human takes months, really months. And while in mice, weeks. So of course we work in mice also for this reason. And if you want to see what really happens, here is the degeneration of the nerve terminal, and a stump is formed on the axons, and the nerve is here, is shown with the staining of Golgi and Cahill. And the terminal degenerates, but not as perisynaptic Schwann cell, which becomes macrophage, and they eat all the debris to clear the site, and then regeneration can start. And this property is really remarkable for humans because there are not many organs that regenerate in our body. And it has been conserved during evolution because the neuromuscular apparatus is essential for life. It's very simple. Regeneration can be followed histologically. You see, this is the regeneration that in a mice takes a week or so. Also, this slide is not really needed, but it is always usually to say it again, repetita iuvant. And this was really a very great initiative, the Global Snakebite Initiative, which is ongoing and which has problem, as Dr. Williams said the first day, but we really have to work because it should really be financed and continue, because it is a major way to tackle the problem. This initiative includes finding drugs which are therapeutic for snake poisoning and disease. And we focused on a particular problem, and it is that of studying the mechanism of neurodegeneration to find drugs that improve the recovery from snake-inducing neuroparalysis. I mean, we want to find drugs that improve in terms of extent, but also time, because time is very critical. Otherwise, the person dies in between if does not access to ICU. And in particular, we want to drug that acts to avoid death by respiratory failure. So we tackled the problem with several techniques. I mean, transcriptomic, imaging, electrophysiological methods. And a first finding was that the stamp here shows the receptor. This receptor is famous because it is the co-receptor of HIV. But as it happens, I mean, these receptors are not only expressed in the immune system, but also in the nervous system. And here it plays a major role. It is fundamental for regeneration. And we have found a drug, one drug that I have no time to show, which is an agonist of this receptor and improves regeneration in mice. And but we found also that the Schwann cell produced the chemokine, which is the ligand. The problem is that this chemokine is not pharmacologically very productive, so we had to use an agonist. The other thing that we found was MT1 is expressed here. MT1 is melatonin receptor, and we found that melatonin, which is produced by muscle, we believe that, I mean, we know that melatonin is produced in the brain to regulate the circadian rhythm. But most of the melatonin in the body, 95%, 98%, is produced by mitochondria of many different cells, particularly muscle. And this melatonin promotes neuroregeneration by working on this receptor. Again, the natural ligand of this receptor has an unfavorable pharmacological properties. So we, through a long-term investigation, identified this molecule, which was produced to treat insomnia, but has a very much higher affinity for the receptor than melatonin. It is FDA approved. It has no side effect, and the patent has expired, so it can be produced as a generic. Actually, there are 13 companies around the world producing as generic. So we believed that it was a very good candidate to repurpose, to be repurposed for improving peripheral neuroregeneration. And this improvement, which is shown here, is shown by an electrophysiological technique, which is CAMP recording, compound muscle action potential recording. And here you have to expose the muscle, and then you stimulate, and you get a signal, the control. If you take a time, an intermediate time of regeneration, which is 96 hours in mice, you get this signal with vehicle. But if you inject this agonist of the melatonin receptor, you have a much higher recovery. And so this assay is very good, and it had been used by many people around the world. However, it has problems in an extensive search because we have to perform a surgery, we have to perform anesthesia, and this anesthesia may interfere with this signal. This is not commonly reported, but it is a practical observation. And also it is invasive. And these are biased it may also bias the mice recovery. And most of the time, the animal has to be sacrificed. So we have to a procedure which is considered less and less acceptable. And so we tried other possibility, and one possibility came out very recently, thanks to the work of Petrov at the Russian Academy of Science in Kazan, in collaboration with Eric Kraichi, who was working until the other day, now he's just retired, at the National Research Council in Paris. And they published the use of this apparatus, which is, they call it actimeter, and in which there is a cage, and the floor of the cage contains several sensors of force and temperature. And these sensors, through the development of several novel algorithms by Petrov and Kraichi's group, allow one to trace the movement map in a defined time period of interest. And you can choose all the periods that you want, a long period, a fraction of period, different time of the day, and so on. And you get this map. And the other is a heat map. And it is easy to understand why most of the time the animal reside here, because it has food and drink. But still, the diagram is interesting. And here is a control, you see, with which shows a large residence time in different parts of the cage. And with the Taipan venom injected mice, the movement is much reduced. And this can be quantified. And the other map is the movement map. It's not Yanis Kounellis painting, but similar. And it shows, this is 1 day recording, and this is the Taipan injected much less. And this can be quantified. I mean, these are preliminary results, because really most of the work is done by myself and I have limited capacity. And this is the total time spent by 3 mice. I think it's only not statistical value, but the result is clear, right? So, and this is really advantageous because you don't have to do anything with the animal. You put the animal, the environment, the animal in the cage, and you record, I mean, and you go away. So it is adaptable to me. And there is another parameter, which I told you that it is essential, and it is respiration. In the past, we developed an in-lab ventilation assay, really homemade, very simple, because it consists in introduction of a gum needle, which is placed in the esophagus. And this senses the ventilation of the thorax. So it is an indirect measurement of ventilation. And this is the trace that you get, right? So you have to anesthetize the animal, place the probe, and then record after a certain time period, after anesthesia, let's say. And this is the recovery after 24 hours of the control, and the animal treated with Ramelteon, and this is another agonist. 96 hours, the effect is really evident, and this is about a week time. The vehicle is still to recover completely, and the Ramelteon is completed. But this method has problem because you have to use anesthesia, which biases the measure. And also it has to be extremely precise because it is very easy to damage the esophagus. And then the manipulation of the animal requires much time, and you can test only 1 animal per time, which is a problem because you want to have statistics. And sometimes, that's very important, it is not possible to repeat the test on the same animal. Almost ever, actually. You cannot repeat that 24 hours, 48 hours, 96 hours, and so on. And this problem is overcome by using this machine, a platysmograph. A platysmograph is a machine to measure ventilation. And it is one of the few cases of a machine which was developed, a technique developed for humans and then adapted to mice. And the adaptation to small animals like mice is very recent. And perhaps the best machine, there are two companies making it, is this company, EMCA from Canada, from Montreal. And we bought recently this apparatus. And these are the cage where the animal is placed. And you can follow record from 80 different cages at the same time. So it really expands your experimental power by 8 times. But the important thing is that there is no animal manipulation. And for example, in Italy, this is essential. I mean, the National Health Authority don't provide approval of project in which you have to use several animals, particularly to study the snake venoms. They don't like the snake venom, so I tried to talk to these people. Anyway, so this really overcome any animal manipulation. You inject the animal and then you open, you leave it to adapt in the cage, and then you start to record. No anesthetics are used, and you can monitor several parameters of respiration at the same time. That it is the other aspect that I will show in a moment. And you can measure the 6 parameters. And this is very important because it really gives you a control, a knowledge of respiration. And this is important in this case, but in many other cases when you consider mammals. And I'll show you a preliminary experiment done with mice injected either with the type venom or Bungarus venom. We inject the entire venom because in the reality, the animal or the person is injected with the entire venom, but we tested also phospholipase A2. And here we measure the expiration time and inspiration time, which really lowers, in the case of envenomation. This is with the low dose, actually, of venom, is 20% of the LD50. And then we can measure the relaxation time, so the time of dilatation of the respiratory muscles. And there is also a real major activity of the venom on this muscle. And we can measure the total volume inspired, and also the breathing frequency, which is another parameter. So I'm sorry I don't have extensive data which will be obtained, I think, in the next few months. And I assure you that really these apparatus are very useful. And this is the group. The group works mainly on neuroregeneration in several diseases, including amyotrophic lateral sclerosis mainly, and Guillain-Barré. But the people involved in the snake venom work, apart from me, are Samuele Negro here, Federico Fabris, who's about to leave to Lisbon, and Martina Campagnaro here. Other people work, let's say, in neuroregeneration, and then we have a turnover that I cannot illustrate. I thank you for the attention. I'm ready to answer questions.